right? So with the conclusion of Dexter Resurrection Season 1 coming to an end, it's time we do our Season 1 review and just discuss how this season went as a whole, how we felt about it, important plot lines that I liked, characters that I liked. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this discussion. First things first, let's talk Dexter Morgan. I couldn't be more happier to see this character return. This is my favorite fictional character of all time, and I have a lot of them, okay? From a lot of different movies, shows, anime. I have a lot of favorite characters, but Dexter is my #1 favorite fictional character, especially when it comes to series. This is my favorite show in general, and I know it's not a perfect show. I know that, right? We know that the later half of Dexter, the original Dexter, is not the greatest, compared to the first 4 seasons. But still, I absolutely love Dexter Morgan. I'm so glad we got this character back for a 3rd time now, really a 4th time if we're going to count Original Sin, which I have a video about that's going to drop after this one, because if you haven't heard, Original Sin did get canceled, which I am very sad about. But sticking to the topic of Dexter Resurrection, we see Dexter wake back up in the hospital, right? He's trying to get his strength back. He survived the gunshot from his son Harry due to the cold weather, which... okay, I could see what y'all are doing there. It was kind of a cop-out to write themselves out of a terrible ending that was the ending of New Blood. But as a Dexter fan, I'll allow it, all right? I'll allow the terrible writing if it allows us to get my favorite character back on screen and back into the mix and back to serial killing, okay? So he survives this attack. He wakes up in the hospital from a coma. We get this nice scene where he's seeing all of these different villains and people he had conflicts with throughout the past, kind of giving him words of encouragement, get back in there, right? We get to see Dokes again. I like seeing Dokes come back. That was awesome, right? And then we get a nice scene where Batista comes to visit him. He, of course, got word of Dexter from his girlfriend at the end of New Blood. That's a whole nother thing, right? Why the hell is a small town rinky-dink cop getting to be the one that discovers that Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher and that he's hiding out in this town, and be the one to report it back to Batista? That was just terrible writing, terrible plot lines. I'm so glad that we're past the New Blood part of this series. But back to what we were saying, Batista got word of New Blood, so he comes to visit him with him waking up in the hospital. Dexter's like, this is not good at all, because he suspects me of being the Bay Harbor Butcher. He escapes from the hospital and makes his way to New York. Now, it just so happens that Harry is living in New York now. His son is living there now, so Dexter makes his way there. He's sort of watching over him from afar. And of course, we get to see their relationship blossom and come back together, which I liked seeing. I'm glad that they fixed the relationship between Dexter and Harry amongst the 10 episodes of Season 1 of Dexter Resurrection. I'm glad that Harry is this likable character now and that he's in a good place with his father. I think they could do a lot more interesting things with that. They sort of managed to get away from where we were going with New Blood, where it's like Harry has these murderous tendencies because, he's seen his mother Rita in the bath of blood, and then Dexter is his father and he was sort of training him. Even though we see Harry murder and cover up a murder inside of episode 1 and do it the Dexter way, that progresses more, and come to find out he's not exactly, this psychopath, sociopathic killer like Dexter Morgan, like his father, that we honestly would like him to be. He's not like that at all. He's sort of just a regular guy who has this strong sense of justice, that Morgan sense of justice, as this show puts it. And he gets to slide back into being this regular dude who's trying to attend college, even though, law enforcement is looking towards Harry Morgan as being the one responsible for the killing that they're investigating him for, which of course we know he is, of course, responsible for. We'll see how that plays out if it goes any further in season 2. Dexter, of course, does a great job covering for him and planting things on Lady Vengeance, which let's go ahead and jump into that, right? So while Dexter is trying to find a new serial killer in New York City by the name of the Dark Passenger, it of course catches Dexter's attention because that is Dexter's name for his Dark Passenger, right? That's Dexter's name. You're stealing his name. Dexter doesn't like that. He's coming to take you out. He ends up taking this guy out, right? And then he sort of takes his identity because he finds an invitation on him from Leon Prater, which, by the way, magnificent character. We'll go into more about Leon Prater in a bit, but he finds this invitation into this serial killer hangout club, right? This serial killer club. He goes to this club, fakes his identity, is still playing Red Schmidt, is I believe the identity he was under for the Dark Passenger, and the audience is now introduced to this serial killer club with tons of different personalities and tons of different future potential victims for the Bay Harbor Butcher to feed on, which I thought was a genius idea from the show writers. I absolutely love this idea of Leon Prater's serial killer club. I like the personality of Lady Vengeance, which of course we know what happens to her. Dexter plants the evidence for Harry on Lady Vengeance, and we end up finding her supposedly hanging in her cell. But I do want to touch on, a little conspiracy theory about this series, that being that Lady Vengeance is still alive, right? Which we'll talk about later when we get to the episode 10 finale conversation. So Dexter begins making his way through this serial killer club, taking out all of them in very interesting, intriguing ways. My favorite one would have to be the Gemini killer. I thought that was a great concept. I wish they did more with that character, but sadly they don't. Dexter gets the better of him in a very interesting way where he swaps the cups. That was a nice touch there. And to make a long story short, because I don't want this review to be too long, eventually Dexter takes out all the members outside of like this old man, with his serial killer name being Rapunzel, because he likes to take, the hair, the ponytail of his victims. They seem to be saving that for season 2, but Dexter does take out everyone else, and now it moves us into Leon Prater eventually discovering Dexter's true identity, because of course Batista is hunting Dexter throughout this entire series in New York City, which results in Batista telling Leon Prater Dexter's true identity. It gives Leon Prater the one-up on Dexter. He ends up capturing him inside of this vault, and then it brings us to the finale, which that's really what I want to talk about in this video, is the finale of this season as a whole. So in this finale episode, or at the very end of episode 9, I should say, is I believe where this event takes place, Batista is captured by Leon Prater. He's served up on a table to Dexter, and Dexter of course chooses to save his long lost friend Batista. Batista then, tries to strangle Dexter. He's pissed off at him. He's mad at him for Dokes, for Maria. And then Leon Prater ends up being the one to murder Batista's character. Now, such a sad death in this series, right? This was an amazing character from episode 1, season 1, original Dexter. He's been there throughout this entire series, so to see him finally go after all of this time was a very sad loss for the fan base. I know a lot of people were sad about that one. That was like the big breaking news for this season, right? And one of like the top 2 main events to take place in this entire season. That then transitions us into episode 10, the finale, where Dexter is now trapped in this vault. Leon Prater runs out with Uma Thurman, his bodyguard, which by the way, I love that she is involved in this series. She's in one of my favorite movies of all time, that being Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, and she does an amazing job here nonetheless. She's also in Pulp Fiction. Like, she's just in so many classics, right? She's a legend in Hollywood, so I'm glad to see her take a part inside of Dexter Resurrection. And now for this finale, we're trying to figure out how Dexter is going to escape this vault, get out of this vault, and get his revenge on Leon Prater. Now that brings us to the scene where, come to find out, Leon has been collecting files for each and every serial killer he's ever interacted with and kept, a memento from them in his vault. So Dexter finds all of these files. We find out which ones are active and have been killed. And now is the time to bring up that conspiracy that I mentioned earlier with Lady Vengeance, because she is in these files still listed as active, right? It doesn't say she's deceased or she's no longer active. It still has the green label on her file saying active, meaning that she probably survived that prison hanging somehow, and we're going to end up seeing her come back in season 2, which I can't wait to see that, because I felt like they got rid of her character way too early, and she was an amazing addition to this show. Now, also within these files, which the police end up finding later, now we'll talk about what else was in these files later, because it's revealed at the very end of the episode. But moving on, okay, Dexter calls Harry. That's sort of his saving grace here. It's the last person that could save him out of this messed up position he found himself in, being stuck in Leon's vault. His son comes to save him, releases him, ends up guessing the right code there, right? So like I said, I'm glad to see Dexter and Harry's relationship finally blossom. I wish we got more of that in New Blood, but of course, Leon Prater, still a problem to deal with. He takes his security guard's gun, goes to that vault, finds Harry there, right? And then we get this scene where he's holding Harry hostage. Dexter's trying to plead to him, hey, don't kill my son, kill me. You'll be the, the greatest of all time. You'll be the one to have taken out the Bay Harbor Butcher of all serial killers. And Leon Prater seems to have, a taste for blood after finally killing Batista, which makes him, of course, ready for Dexter's table. And then we get a scene where Harry ends up stabbing him in the leg with the M99, right? The sleep serum, the magic sleep serum that Dexter likes to use. And then we get that famous table scene that takes place between Dexter, Leon Prater, where Dexter, in a very interesting moment, doesn't even take a memento from this guy. He says, I don't even want to remember you, right? I want you to be a thing of the past. I don't even want to think about you again after this moment. Then we get that table scene where he finally defeats, kills Leon Prater, grabs up as many files as he possibly can from Leon Prater, and ends up taking his body and those hefties to Leon's yacht and using that as his dumping base in front of all places the Statue of Liberty, which I thought was a great scene there. And then they set up the alarm and have all the cops that were at Leon's ball that was taking place in the final episode come up to the vault, and they're able to see that he's been keeping this stash of serial killer mementos. He's been keeping these files that Dexter left behind, you know, the half of the files that he wasn't able to grab and take with him. So that's Leon Prater's reputation pretty much in the trash with that. And the cops that come up, the detective ends up finding one file left behind from a case that she hasn't been able to forget from the beginning of her career, a case that has gone unsolved from the very beginning of this show. It's introduced to us, it's told to us that she is obsessed over this case. And that is, of course, the Ripper. Don Frampt is, I think, what his name was. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, right? Now, an interesting thing about Don Frampt's file is that it doesn't say active or deactive or deceased or anything like that. It actually has like an orange label on it. And this is, of course, where another conspiracy is coming from, and something that I wanted to touch on earlier in this video. We're now finally have gotten to this part. It says farm. Now, I have no idea what that means, farm. It's such an interesting label. Maybe it means that Leon was keeping him somewhere, right? He's clearly had interactions with him because he has a memento from him and he knows his identity. He has his real name there on the paper. So I'm so curious to see what's going to be the result of this character. We're going to find out in season 2. If you guys didn't notice, all of the different introductions to these episodes have been really a slow pan out to a manhole cover, which is, of course, the weapon that the Ripper was using for his kills inside of this series. So I'm curious to see, you know, Dexter go after this killer in season 2, what the result of that is going to be, where he's potentially hiding out, probably inside of the sewers is what I've seen people saying online. And that would be a very interesting take and would make sense as to why they haven't been able to catch this guy up to this point. Now, we also have a bunch of cases that Dexter took with him, a bunch of those files. So those are going to be potential Bay Harbor Butcher victims in the future for season 2. And there's just such like a bright future for the Dexter Resurrection series. They did an amazing job with season 1. I couldn't be more of a fan at how well Dexter Resurrection season 1 concluded, because they're known for bad endings, but luckily we didn't get one here with season 1 of Resurrection. And like I said, such a bright future ahead for season 2. I believe this show's already been approved for 2 or 3 more seasons, like for up to season 4, I think. Maybe I heard that incorrect, but 100% it's been confirmed that a season 2 is releasing, that we're going to be getting that. The ratings for this series are off the charts, right? It got amazing ratings. Every single episode this season on IMDb has been rated above an 8.5. I think episode 1 and 2 were like 8.7 and 8.9, and then the rest of the episodes were like 9.0s and up. So that's huge, absolutely huge. And this, of course, sort of resulted in the cancellation of Original Sin. We'll talk about that in another video. I do want to discuss that because I'm a bit sad. I was enjoying Original Sin, honestly, as a Dexter fan. But nonetheless, what would I rate Dexter Resurrection season 1? If I had to rate season 1 of this series, I would go ahead and give it a 9.5 out of 10. I think it gets the 9.5 out of 10, a very solid rating. I loved season 1. Can't wait to see what they do with season 2. I think it is going to be better than this season because there's just so much more that they can do with Dexter existing inside New York City. So those are my thoughts on this season, guys. I'd love to know your thoughts about this season down in the comment section down below. If you don't know what we do here on Demigod ET, we do film, TV, and anime-based content. So if you're interested in this type of content, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.